Okay, we are all set. Charlene?
Yes, you want me to start? Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Charlene Wentland, and I work at BCUACE as a Technical Assistance Associate. And I'm very happy today to introduce you to our speaker, Dr. Catherine Matthews. Dr. Matthews is Vice President and Co-Director of Eli's Village. And Eli's Village, as she'll probably tell you, but I'll give you a little hint, is a person-centered agency that supports families who have a family member with special needs, and they assist with family future planning. So I'll let Dr. Matthews tell you a little bit more about planning for the lifetime of support.
Great, thanks so much. And I really appreciate you all giving me a chance to talk here. I'm going to be talking about special needs planning and a very simple planning process. So as Charlene mentioned, I've worked in the special needs space for a long time, over 20 years, and I'm also a special needs mom, which came later. Actually got my start first professionally and then had my own kiddo, and that has just added to the journey and been very rewarding. But through that course, we've really learned a lot, and a couple of years ago, I met an amazing mom on a mission, and her son is Eli. And she realized that she came to realize what a lot of us realize is just how very hard it is to plan and to take that long-term view and to get resources. So she said there's just got to be a better way. And that's what we've developed through Eli's Village. And so I'll talk through that piece just a little bit. So we know one of the parts is that disability has an impact on every aspect of life, whether it's minimally or in a more challenging way. But regardless, when we're thinking about where we live, where we want to eat dinner, how we're going to spend our time, or what we need, it is through that lens of knowing that there are some special needs for an individual that we're supporting. And so we have to, of course, take that into consideration as we're doing our planning. And so where we're really trying to turn things on their head is, everyone has heard of person-centered planning, and that's a term certainly we use at Eli's Village. And I don't mean to minimize it at all. It's very important. When people sit down to plan for my little guy, I want it to be very person-centered and driven by Ethan. But what we've come to realize is that family-centered is really the approach we need to take. We need to take a family focus and support every member of that family. The research is there. It's very clear. You can't dispute it. Families impacted by exceptional needs spend at least about 30 hours a week providing unpaid support to their child. And you might, as a mom like me, go, well, I don't want to be paid to take care of my child. But the reason why that's important is because that support is usually way beyond the high school years in most cases. Even if your child is doing well and pretty independent, you may be helping to manage them and support them, helping to manage their needs and support them when they're ready to buy a car or a house, or making a decision about where to go to school or what job to do. So you find that you're on the other end of the phone helping to support them. And that's so important because later on, in the event that you're not able to provide those supports, who's the person that's going to step in your place? So we really have to capture that. So the research tells us there are a lot of hours on the table there that folks need. They're unpaid. And then also we know that the primary people that support an individual with special needs are their family members. Siblings, grandparents are huge, cousins, they become that network of support. And so, if we don't take a family focus, we're leaving things on the table. And we have found when we talk to parents, we talk to a sibling who says, well, I'm on my brother's special needs trust. I'm his trustee, or I'm going to be his trustee one day, but I'm not really sure what to do. Or we have a parent that says, I know I need to apply for an ABLE account to have some funding in place for my child later on, but I just haven't been able to make an appointment, or I can't navigate that Medicaid waiver system. And so a lot of folks will say, okay, well, let's make sure they have some respite services so they can have some free time to go and do those things. Well, the research also says that when we get those respite services, we're not usually at the Medicaid office knocking on the door, but rather we're cooking a meal. We're getting those groceries we couldn't get. We're calling for that maintenance worker to come do something to our home that we just haven't had a chance to schedule. So sometimes the life we live is compromised in the sense that not that it's a lower quality, but it just means that the day to day is different for us and we don't have time for some of those things. So giving somebody more time is always helpful, but we can't assume that that time is going to be used for planning purposes. So what Eli's Village does, and what this model is, I'm not here to sell Eli's Village, but I really want people to embrace this model, and we really hope a few years from now that this family-centered focus will really be how people are thinking about to support special needs families. But we want to do these activities for families. I want to set up your ABLE account. I want to call your support coordinator at the Medicaid waiver office. I want to call that number on the back of your insurance card and get some services going. So we actually need to be in a position where the support that needs to be provided sometimes is just doing the things that a family needs on their behalf. Not just the gift of time, but definitely give people time if you can. And because we're so ready to do everything to support a family in terms of paperwork that they need, services that they need, and protections that they need, we've created a strategy. And when parents walk through it this way, we think this can be very effective. So we call it our 3-step plan, or 3-step process, which is legal, asset, and family protection. So I'll talk through why those are important. So again, it's life planning for the whole family. You know, we want mom and dad to be doing well. We want grandma, grandpa, your nana, siblings, all of those people involved in supporting the individual. We want everybody to be taken care of. We have a family right now that we're supporting, and mom is recovering from breast cancer. So she's in remission from breast cancer. But that's still on our radar. We want to make sure mom is healthy and she's not missing those doctor's appointments and those proactive checks to make sure she's doing okay. Because we know stress and not getting enough sleep and taking care of yourself puts you at greater risk. So we want to make sure we're taking care of mom. We've got a sibling who really wants to support her brother, but she doesn't feel prepared to do it. So we need to provide training and support to her so she feels okay. And guess what? She also wants to go to college. So let's help her do what she needs to do to go to college and feel successful there. So again, we're going to think about everybody. And again, what's so special about the special needs planning process is that we're really talking about life, and we're talking about some of the supports that people need have not been captured. So the things that mom, dad, grandma, grandpa do to help the person with exceptional needs, because it's not a staff member, there's not a job description, there's not a list, nobody has gone to, the caregivers and said, hey, write down like everything you know how to do. How do you get him to take his bath pretty quickly? What's that special thing you get to do to make him swallow, not make him, I hope you know what I mean, but get your child to take their medicine. So those little hints, those bits of information, they're not written down anywhere. So we need to get all of that stuff down. So it's special in the sense that these aren't things that are traditionally known, and they're very specific to the particular family. So anytime you're going through a process like this with a family, there really has to be some discovery or assessment. We like to think about it traditionally. So you're really having to get to know that family. I know for us, it at least takes a couple of meetings, but getting to know a family is getting to know certainly the individual that everyone's worried about, the one with exceptional needs, but also mom. Is mom working? Is mom have friends or other supports that are involved? What's going on there for mom? Dad, again, siblings. So it's diving in and doing assessment with everyone, which is not something we do traditionally, because a lot of times what's driving those assessments are the fundings and regulations behind them. But we're saying is that if you're sitting across from a family and you're only talking about one member, we think you're falling short, because those other people that are sitting there at the meeting, they are involved, and their health and well-being is just as important, because if they're not doing well and they're not getting those needs met and they haven't been able to put some of the legal and financial protections in place, stress and uncertainty is just abound. And we don't think it takes too long to open up that conversation and invite the other family members into the planning process. So that we call it a legal protection plan. We call all of these things protections because they're proactive. We definitely have families that call us and say, oh no, this happened. What do I do now? But of course we call them protections because you put a protection in place to proactively address a potential harm or threat that could come your way. So it's being proactive and trying to stay ahead of the game. So a couple of the ones that I will talk about, are the special needs trust, a family trust, a micro board, and certainly your kind of traditional power of attorney and advanced medical directives. So we like to talk through families with their legal protections first, because that's going to put you on solid ground. That's really the base, because there are things that can go wrong, and if we're not protected in this manner, it could cause greater problems, or it could leave us with fewer supports to address it. So a special needs trust, and any trust, a trust is really acting, serves as a way to protect assets and to ensure that assets do not go through what's called a probate process. So when you leave your assets behind, if you pass away and you know, your car is just titled in your name, or you don't have a will, or, you know, your house is just titled in your name, those items, because of their value, may have to go through the probate process, the tax probate process. This is expensive. It involves attorneys. So when you set up a trust, what you're really doing is you're telling the world, these items have been accounted for. They're a part of this trust. This is the trustee who's in charge of this, and this is what's going to happen. There's no need to go through probate. I think a lot of us grew up in a time where people assumed that a trust meant being very wealthy. It doesn't. It's just it's a protection. And there are ways to get a trust or establish a trust, you know, under $3,000, which is pretty amazing. I know that's a lot of money, though when you think about later on in life, you're gone and your siblings are having, or not your siblings, your children are having to go through the probate process because you haven't titled your assets to a trust. They're going to have to pay tons of money in legal expenses to take care of that. That's why you see those estate sales, right? Because the funds are gone and folks are having to supply it. So a special needs trust, what's really unique about this and why this was developed is because it's allowing assets to be protected to the benefit of somebody with a special need. And it's protecting them because it's still allowing, the way a special needs trust is designed and recognized legally, is it allows that person with special needs to still access public benefits. So if you need a Medicaid waiver, that special needs trust might house some assets that would benefit you in the sense that you may need those things, but they don't count as your assets as a special needs person. When you apply for a Medicaid waiver, or you need a Medicaid service, or any Medicaid, you can't have but so many assets, a couple $1,000s. So if you think about it, if a house is in your name or a car is in your name or something else, that's going to put you over that limit. And then you would lose that Medicaid waiver service. And this happens sometimes. You know, a well-meaning grandparent or relative says, oh, you know, Kathy, her son Ethan has autism. Let's make sure we leave the house to him. Don't do that. Please don't do that. My son is on the Medicaid waiver wait list. You would ruin everything if he suddenly had a house in his name. But he has a special needs trust, and you can leave that house to the special needs trust. And so in the event in Ethan's life, if he needs a condo, or maybe he needs a therapy that's not covered under his insurance, the assets in there could be used to pay for that. And that's what the trustee's job is. So that's a big one. And typically trusts are funded upon death. So often, again, people are leaving things in a will to a trust. They might have a life insurance policy and the beneficiary is the trust. So that's just such a nice tool to make sure I use my son a lot as an example, but I hope that I'm in my home right now. I'd love to leave my home to him, but I'm not going to leave it to him. I'm going to leave it to the trust. A microboard is another amazing tool, and actually a special needs trust and a microboard can work together. A microboard is truly just that. It is a mini little board of directors for the benefit of one person. There is a microboard is recognized in states here in the US, Canada. It's one of those things that's really big in Canada. The Virginia Microboard Association has actually just come under Eli's Village. So we are now overseeing that. The website has not been updated. This literally just happened within the last 30 days. But they are kind of retiring, and we are going to take that part over and make sure we're disseminating information and the tools to build a microboard for free. So that's our mission at Eli's Village. But a microboard, we think a lot about somebody with a special need having a circle of support. You know, I've got my mom, I've got my friends, I've got my teacher, my therapist, whoever it is, they're kind of like my circle. Well, what a microboard does is it just really ups the level of that and creates a legal entity. And they have to meet, just like any board, at a minimum of once a year. They have to take meeting minutes. And the folks on the microboard are really trained to support that individual. And a microboard is just for that individual. So it's, for example, Ethan's microboard. That's how it exists. And it has bylaws and procedures. It might sound like a lot of work. There's actually not too much. It's a pretty simple document when you set it up. You just have to decide how many people you want on your microboard, how many, what kind of people you want, what you want them to do, what your goal is. But the idea is if you start it early, you're starting to build this community, this formal circle of support. So every year you have this one meeting that is a truly deep dive. I mean, it's a presentation. Just imagine going to a board meeting. It's a presentation. Hopefully Ethan one day will do his own presentation. Where are you? What happened this year? Okay, I'm in this grade. I'm getting these therapies. These are my favorite things to do. This is what I like. This is what I don't like. And that might not be important right now, but every year you update it and you do it again and you do it again. And let's fast forward 30 years. Ethan's been meeting with his little special team and they've gotten to really know him. And now Ethan's mom's not so available to help him. And Ethan's calling going, hey, I've got a problem at work. I really know my mom's not available to help me, but I've created this team of support through my microboard. So I'm going to go call, Nancy, who's on my board, and see if she can help me with that. Or I'm going to call a board meeting and try and get some assistance with that. So you're creating a team of people who are dedicated. It's not like how they see Ethan on his birthday or at the holidays. It's like an intentional group that's designed to support him. They're not his guardian. But they also work with that trustee. So I have another son who probably one day will serve as the trustee, and he's going to also learn the microboard so that he can use them as a resource when he's trying to help make decisions for his brother. So it's a really nice tool to use in addition. And at Eli's Village, we train microboard members. And again, please, this isn't a sales call. I'm not trying to sell Eli's Village, but just to explain to you how it works. We train, board members can be trained, and then also recruiting, right? So some people may need to come off, some people may need to come on, and there's that whole piece that has to be managed too. So that is an exciting tool. And again, this just kind of shows how the person's in the middle and that trust and that microboard are working together to support that person for a lifetime. We feel like this is when parents come in and say, what's going to happen when I'm gone? I'm like, you need a microboard. Let's talk about that, because that building that team of support now in an intentional way is really important. There are other tools here, particularly I'm going to speak mostly for Virginia, but a supportive decision maker is a legally appointed, just that, decision maker that works on behalf and works with an individual with an exceptional need. So you can actually have somebody legally designated. There's also guardianship, where you may limit the rights of someone with an exceptional need for their safety. So that is something here in Virginia. And then power of attorney is someone being able to deal with your financial needs, medical directives, telling hospitals to what extent to help you. That's actually a really big one. Those of you, I just think this is important to mention. If you did a medical directive 10, 15, 20 years ago and you said, hey, I never want to be on a ventilator. By the way, ventilators just saved a lot of lives during COVID. So this is a really good time to remember some of the old school ways we used to think about that stuff. Need to be updated. Any legal document like that, you really got to take a look at about every 5 years. And beneficiaries, make sure all of your plans, again, things that are titled, that they're going to all the right places and that you're protecting that exceptional individual. So this is just a quick case study, little Maya. So she may need a special needs trust. Her grandmother maybe needs a Medicaid trust, which is another entity that I don't have time to necessarily talk about today, but there's a tool there to protect someone who maybe doesn't have a lot of means or assets for life. Guardianship may be something that's considered if someone has needs and we're worried about their safety and well-being on their own. And then we'd want to make sure, all those medical directives are in place for a family. This is just sort of a picture of kind of that legal foundation we may put in place for a family. So the asset protections, that second level, I went a little fast. We always like to think about that $1 million question. So people always ask, like, how much money is it going to cost to protect my child over life? And so we've actually have a tool called the expense calculator. Be happy to share it with folks, where you can come up with that number. Because again, there's so many unpaid supports. There are things that we do to help our children or family members that don't have a price tag sitting on them. Again, we don't have a job description. So there's a tool you can go through and figure out what are all the things I do and what would it take. So if I can't drive my child to robotics and I have to pay someone to drive them, what's that cost? If getting medications, my child can't make his own doctor's appointment, so someone would have to call and do that. What are all those costs that come into play? The reason why that's important and why it's under this asset section is, again, some families think, well, again, I'm going to leave something to my child, or I'm going to get life insurance that's going to fund a trust, and I've got a $500,000 policy or $1 million policy. Well, you're kind of shooting in the dark. You've really got to actually know how much care costs. So going through an exercise like that and figuring out expenses can be extremely helpful. And then setting up really a financial plan based on that. And again, for every member of the family, going to college, buying homes, joining clubs, having a subscription to Netflix, what are all the different things the family wants and needs, and then how can we really budget and plan for that? So there are multiple tools looking at investments, tax efficiencies, again, different accounts like an ABLE account, getting on those Medicaid waiver services. Some of those things can really be cost saving and allow funds to be redirected elsewhere for other activities. So we really like to make sure folks go through that process of financial planning to really have some direction for how to get from here to there, given how much we know we might be spending outside of what's covered for somebody with exceptional needs. So for example, here, one of the families we were working for, they had not set up those 529 college saving programs. And there's also the ABLE account, which is along the same lines, but it's for people with exceptional needs. So we wanted to make sure they were all set up for that. Retired military. So again, the family member we were working with, this is based on, this case study is based on a real family. He had life insurance and other insurance policies through his work with the government, but he set those up 20 years ago. And so again, modern times, there are a lot of new policies. So, if you worked for the military 20 years ago, it was like, well, nobody will insure you. You're such a risk. You work in a really challenging job. But that's really changed now. There's more available. Even somebody who gets a new job, your first day on the job, you're signing like 100 papers about what you want your benefits to look like. And do I want this? And do I want that? Having a moment there to really go through that, because those can become some great cost savings and planning tools. Employers usually want their employees to be pretty happy and they can offer some nice benefits, but we're often overwhelmed those first few days that we're not taking the time. So again, to protect all family members, you could really look into that. Sometimes disability insurance, people sort of don't think, well, I'm not going to need that, or long-term care insurance. So we can really dive into make sure you've selected all of those different options. So those are all important things to consider that can save you money, or make sure the things that you are getting are at a really good cost. And third, I would say this is the one we're all most familiar with, which is the family protection plan. And this is at Eli's Village where I really come into play as the family services person. And we have found with exceptional families, as you all know, they're super busy. And so, really taking advantage of all of the available programs and supports out there can be kind of hard, because it takes a deep dive. And here in Richmond, Virginia, we are just full of nonprofits and amazing organizations that, oh my gosh, they could do so much to really enrich the life of someone. And so, but, again, as I mentioned, family members, if they even do have a few hours, the research tells us that they're not spending it making these kinds of calls. Like, they're just doing the laundry. I've got somebody in my house, I have a minute, let me get that laundry done, or let me go fix that leak that's happening on the sink. It's like the day-to-day stuff. It's a very different life than a traditional life where you're not consuming all of your time that way. And I'm not saying having a traditional household or family is easy by any means. I just mean that the research is telling us there's a different experience for families with an exceptional member. So part of what we do is that assessment. So what kinds of things do the members of the family like to do? What kinds of the things might they need to do? So we have an assessment process, and you would want to go through and talk about what's going on out in the community and what would be a really good fit. Then, of course, securing those resources, and then also collaborating. So part of the family protection plan is thinking about how to be an advocate when we're thinking of family-driven planning, how to be an advocate for that family. So as I mentioned, the mom who is in remission for her breast cancer, making those appointments for her on her behalf and really encouraging her to make sure that she goes and to put herself first in those situations to make sure her health is going really, really well. And then just ongoing monitoring as we support a family. Sometimes, as I mentioned, I'm thinking of those of you may know here in Richmond, Jacob's Chance is an exceptional organization. I don't get any credit for talking about them, but they are just one of those organizations where they do hiking, they do indoor stuff, they do online stuff, they have summer camps, they have a fishing event. I mean, all kinds of fun stuff, but unless you know about them or you've heard about it or really had some time to do a deep dive on their website, you may not know that this could apply to you. A lot of us, when we have a special needs family member, we're often thinking about therapy and those kinds of supports, but really recreational opportunities, chances for social skills, groups that go bowling or do Legos. It's out there, and it can be hard to first identify it, decide if it's appropriate, and then arrange your schedule in a way that you're going to get there on time and be able to participate. So again, a lot of it, there's also for individuals who are going to be going to college, there are actually a lot of colleges that have great programs to support individual with special needs. And I'm not talking about your standard traditional disability office, actual meaningful programs that really want to support individuals with different needs. And so, we can help identify and make those matches. And again, if it's not us, someone else. So it's so important to think about sitting with the family and going, what do they need? We have another family that has 4 children, and they they have one child with autism, and then they have another little kiddo that they think might be on the spectrum somewhere. They're not really sure. He's not been diagnosed. Then they have the other 2, involved in soccer and another organization through their church. So they're all really pretty busy, but because they're busy, it's been hard to take this deep dive and think about how to enrich all of their lives a little bit further to the extent to make sure they're getting support. But we can call and make that appointment to get that assessment. We can help to introduce them to activities that maybe all 4 can participate in. So it's sort of one trip. I think the parents would tell you they spend a lot of time on the road driving everybody to and from where they need to go. So those kinds of things can be helpful too. The other bit is just figuring out the state benefits. A lot of times when I talk to families, it's, gosh, well, I called my local community services board, but they told me I don't qualify. Well, that's not how that process is supposed to work. So we want to make sure that you're going in, doing the screening, meeting with them, and going through the right channels to see if you qualify for services. But you also have to pick out the waiver that's going to work for you. And as much work as there's been done, on the websites, and they always look better each time I see them, it can still really be overwhelming for a family. And as you can manage, particularly a family, as we've discussed, that has very little time to be doing this. So we can really help set up those initial meetings, help prepare families to do those applications. Again, also doing the coordination. So at Eli's Village, what I do is not only help support families to get all these services, but I'm coordinating that. We have a process whereby each week we take that strategy, that legal, that asset, that family, and then their little goals. It looks a lot like an IEP or an individualized service plan where there's the long-term goal. Then there are these little short goals. Like this week, we need to do this step to get there. And this week, we're going to do that step and that step. And then instead of the parent's name, you'll see my name. Kathy's going to do this, or Kristen or Kelly, my other colleagues that I work with, might be doing some of those goals, because we're really there to do it in partnership with that family. And we realize part of it is the getting it done part that is making it so hard. So again, what this might look like in this case study is, Maya, who has autism, she's getting access to some sibling groups and other recreational opportunities. One of the siblings is getting some counseling because they've noticed some concerns. There's been a way to set that up. Babysitters. I've actually sat in on babysitter interviews to help a family pick the right one because they're worried, right? I've got a child who has exceptional needs. I'm the only one that can take care of them. I can't possibly, parents will say all the time, it's going to be more trouble to train someone I'll just, I'd rather not do it. Well, let us help you do that because we want to make sure we've got those meaningful breaks to get some things done, not just to do the laundry. And then certainly that Iep and waiver advocacy. And I don't mean that in an adversarial way. What I really mean is that sometimes parents don't understand what that tool is, and how it can work for them and what's meant to happen. And again, the same thing with the waiver, understanding those of you who may have a Medicaid waiver, the SIS assessment and things like that. So we can provide a lot of education and support to families just so they understand some of these things. When you're getting a lot of these public benefits, there's a lot of info overload coming your way. And so it helps to just be that hand in hand with them. So, at any point of the journey, most of our clients are in that teenage to young adult age range. But we can really help at any point. We know there are a lot of transitions along that life plan, or lifespan, excuse me. So we kind of pop in at any point. And as I mentioned to you, that IEP or ISP kind of form that we use, it's called the ELI plan. It's exceptional, lifelong, and individualized plan. So that's what we create for families and what we monitor on a weekly, monthly, and quarterly basis. And then we have our annual meeting every year. So that ELI plan has, again, all those legal steps that we're working on that can take a while, all those asset steps, making sure that the families are setting aside the funding for every member of the family, and then those individualized plans. And that's kind of what it looks like for us. This is what we think family-centered planning is. So it's the family in the middle, and then we're providing all of that wraparound support, and we are coordinating with the legal, tax, financial, and I would say I represent that private case management service. So that is really us and what we do. I think I met my goal of trying to keep it in time so I could open it up for questions.
Yes, you did a wonderful job. And anyone who has questions, go ahead and start adding those into the chat for us. And that's just, it's really nice to hear that there are services that can kind of come in and partner with families and take an approach that looks at the entire family life, which is really cool. So one question in here is, these services, what localities are they available? And are you meaning maybe just Eli's? Is that, I can't tell from the question if it's just talking about your services or if it's the other services you mentioned. So I'll let you interpret.
Yeah, sure. Well, we are actually national. So we're not in every state. So we are headquartered here, but we do have clients in a few other states, spread out a little bit. We've really aligned, again, we work a lot with grandparents too. And I think that's kind of what started it, is we were connecting with people out of state that way, but it's what worked well. Every state has the same system in a sense where they are getting federally directed funds, and they need to allocate and decide how they're going to spread them out. So here in Virginia, it's our Medicaid waiver program. So there's a version of that in every state. So as long as you have that understanding of state systems, which I do, you can maneuver in pretty much any state. But it does mean sometimes that what's available, like the ABLE account that I mentioned, some of those things can vary a little bit in the state. And sorry, what was the other question? I think
it was just getting in contact with you. I guess it sounds like all of the state of Virginia. I think a lot of our folks that are on the meeting with us today are probably in Virginia. So I guess it's just getting in contact with the Virginia groups.
Okay, I put my email in the chat, just kmatthews@elisvillage.com. And I felt like I saw somebody talking about fees for services was a question.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a couple different models. There are some services that we provide. Well, first and foremost, let me say this. So anybody calling us or emailing with a question is going to get their question answered. We're very, family facing. We think this is a big issue in terms of how people plan. So this talk, and we do a lot of talks like this because we want to really push this idea of a model of addressing all members of a family and helping to tie all of those things together. So we will answer questions. So please feel free to email me or call. And there are also some of the tools, as I mentioned, with the microboard or other pieces that we can hand out to folks to work on. So some of our services are just fee-based, like if you just want something done, I just need my legal documents set up, so a fee for service. And then otherwise we have, and then we also have our nonprofit Eli's Hope component, which is where services are free, completely free. There's a board that evaluates applications to Eli's Hope, and is completely independent of us, and they decide what a family, they look at what a family needs and make a decision collectively about what they feel they can provide, and then just assign that service to happen. And then otherwise, we really work like a membership because it's a partnership. So there is a fee, an ongoing fee for the service, for the concierge nature of our service.
Got it. So it looks like one of the folks was from Michigan. So
Okay.
done work in that area, or you have a group up there?
I don't right now have somebody in Michigan, but again, those systems exist in each state. So there's a similar model in each state. And I think in particular to the micro boards, there might be a big push for that in Michigan, if I remember correctly, but I would have to double check. So a family coming to me from out of state, I just need to do a quick deep dive into that system and understand how it works. Because it often starts with how that particular state is going to divvy up services. Like in Kansas, some of those Medicaid services that we're used to here in Virginia would actually be under social services in Kansas, but it doesn't work like that here in Virginia. So I just need to dive into that, but please feel free to email me. I'm happy to either point you in the right direction or give you more information.
That's awesome. It looks like there's an Appendix K in the Medicaid waiver question. Do you want to take a look at that one? Do you see that? It says parents becoming paid attendants.
Yes.
Month.
Yeah. So, we're speaking of available services. Parents becoming paid attendants will end next month, unfortunately. Do you see it coming back in the future? Yeah, I don't know. I also know that I don't know. There's always so much movement within regulations, and the other problem that we face, at least here in Virginia, is that what a regulation decides to do, such as in the Department of Behavioral and Developmental Services, Behavioral Health and Developmental Services, DBHDS here in Virginia, what might be regulated is not necessarily funded by Medicaid. So you have to make sure, how you're setting up services, that those are fit and that they're going to walk together. So you might have a list of, I have an adult who qualifies for all of these services, but they're little, they have to be funded, and they're not going to be funded if there's another service in place that kind of cancels out this other service. So it's a little bit tricky. So it's never perfect. So I think when you ask about paid attendance or any services changing and coming back, honestly, I can't have a good forecast on that. But what I do feel strongly about is that and some people may push back, but when I go to meetings with support coordinators and we open up that conversation and discussion, just focused on what the child needs or that individual needs, there you can find some ways in that discussion. Sometimes people come to meetings or look at planning from the perspective of what's available and what can I have. It's just a wrong way to have a conversation. The conversation should always start with what do we need, and then how does that translate into what's available? And then if what we need isn't translating very well, then we need to have another conversation and keep working away at that and make sure we're tapping into every available resource. Because sometimes families have things that they're getting from the waiver, but then also their county, FAPT team, or some other entity is providing another kind of service. And sometimes their health insurance might cover something else. So I think, I want to caution folks that if you go at it going, well, what's available and which one can I have? I wouldn't go that way. I would just say, here's what I need. Let's see how this can work. If you're not getting it there, what are all the other avenues to work through to see?
That's a great way to approach it. I think that one of the other questions here is kind of trying to gauge what the benefits of Eli's Village are versus just reaching out and finding your own services for things like social skills groups, sibling activities, tutoring. There are a lot of organizations, especially in the Richmond metro area, right? So do you want to kind of speak to, Eli's Village's part in connecting to those services, or?
Sure. Yeah, I would just say it's very intimate. So again, instead of looking around and seeing what's out there and trying it, we take time to make sure we know um, these different entities. So that's actually why we call it a village. So for example, I would consider a group like Autism Society. You know, some of these folks are in our village. Like we're very partnered with them. We know them really well, and we make an effort to get to know other organizations. So when, you know, someone's coming, when we have a family member and we've done an assessment and we're talking about what they need, we have that take on all the other entities or where else we need to look. And then we can make that stronger connection. And the reason why we do that and where I think it's helpful is that, one, I just don't think parents have the time, and when the effort that they put into sometimes in doing that and getting shot down can just, you know, you kind of, that's lost time you can't have back. But I think sometimes it's truly an effort to go and get to know all the different entities. And then really the most important thing for us is that some parents just are nervous about trying a new group or a new activity. And I go, you know, I'm happy to go. I remember the first day, I know I mentioned Jacob Chance earlier, but my first interaction with them is I just went on a hike. They advertise hikes. I was like, all right, I'll pay $15 and I'll go on the hike. Just try it out, just so I knew more about it and I had those experiences. So, you know, I think parents can do it. And I'm not saying that all exceptional families are not able, not at all. But for those families out there that are really struggling, you know, we would just encourage them to have a village of support and to get more help to do those things. And the reason why we tie all of it together, the legal and the asset and the family, is that they all work together. Some families may go and get a special needs trust, but then their financial advisor, their investor, their employer doesn't know they have that. And so they're just, when those links aren't there, you're not maximizing it. You know, my personal experience, I remember going to attorney when I got my special needs trust, and this is way before I was at Eli's Village, and she literally was like, you know, I told her, I don't know who's going to take Ethan. Like, I don't have anybody to give Ethan to if I'm not here. And she said, well, you won't be here, and you should just say people will make the best decision. And I just thought, oh my gosh, so I can never die. And it's just when people aren't linking and looking at the whole picture, and our funding system isn't set up to do that, right? You know, the attorney isn't paid to talk to the financial advisor, to talk to your CPA tax advisor, and then talk to your CSB support coordinator. It's not set up that way. We would like it to be, for there to be room to do that eventually. And we feel that by showing people how this model works, that it will encourage people to do that when we show them how you can do it without it being too expensive or, you know, too hard. So that's our mission.
Yeah, it seems like y'all really make those connections and bring awareness of just things and opportunities that people can take advantage of that are just not necessarily widely known. So
Right. Yeah.
very, very neat. Okay, let me see. I kind of got lost in here. Professional development points or certificate for participation for attending. You'll see some information on the ACE website just about, you know, if you need any points for recertifications and stuff. It's just based on the hour that you were here is, I think, 1 point. So you can search recertification on our website to locate that. Oh, and it does sound like you answered Nikki's question on accessing services there. That's awesome. What other things? Anything else that anybody wants to ask while we have Kathy here with us today? And while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to go ahead and just post the information about our next Lunch and Learn here in the chat so that y'all kind of know what's coming up. And that's going to be on March 31st, and it's going to be on the topic of meeting the social and emotional needs of students in Virginia schools. One of the best ways to kind of keep up with the topics that we're going to be covering in these Lunch and Learns is just to keep an eye on the Facebook page for VCU ACE. So I'm just going to throw that out there too. All right, let's see, any other things added?
Yeah, well, it was great getting a chance to talk with all of you.
I know, very nice. And Kathy, we will have an opportunity to post this recording out on our site so that hopefully it can reach even more families as time goes on. And if you don't mind to share your slides with me, I'll make sure those get up on there too, so that folks can have your contact information right there with it and all of your awesome information.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yes. Oh, let's see, hold on. I think we did have something. I think we have some folks that are planning to reach out to you directly with more maybe direct questions, which is wonderful. And this one that just came in, I work primarily with low-income families in underserved areas throughout Virginia, connecting them with services and supports. Do you offer discounts or some sort of structure, I guess, that would allow for families that don't have, can't afford additional costs?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have, so Eli's Hope is big on that. So that is a funded support system that pays for services for families. Again, also we do help. So we're really, when somebody, if you just call and you have a question or you need some direction, we're very happy to do so. If it's going to be a long-term partnership, then again, I would refer to Eli's Hope to provide the funding to do that. But I mean, I have had somebody for example, call me who didn't want to be in our village, forever, didn't want the lifelong partnership or didn't need it at that time, but needed to know how to ask her support coordinator for something. So I helped her to draft an email. There's no charge. I mean, there's just things like people call us, we're happy to help with stuff and provide information. So I think that's it. It just starts, just email me and I will help, talk through that for you. Our goal is that people think about planning differently. And we also just want to provide that help. And there are, other organizations too, where it might be where I need a piece of this. Like for example, the microboard, I mean, it's a template. So it's really good to go. Some of that stuff, it's not, we've done everything we can to keep those costs down. And when there's absolutely no funding, again, there are other avenues. So we very much don't want people to think this is a wealth service or a service for the wealthy. This is something we are really working to make very, very accessible.
And do you all work with insurances or anything? I guess that's another question.
So we can't take insurance funding, no. So it would be more the grants or other kinds of funding with Eli's Hope.
Yeah. You can just tell that, Kathy, and I'm sure the rest of the team at Eli's Village are really passionate about what they do. So with that, their intention is to assist others through this process. So it sounds like it's worth the email to ask more questions.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'd hope to hear from Simi. Really, really happy to help.
Great. Okay, I don't see anything else coming into our chat right now. So we might be able to gift back a few minutes to folks for their rainy afternoon. It's rainy here anyway. I don't know how it is for everyone else. But really appreciate the time that you've taken with us, Kathy. I mean, I learned a lot today as well. And I will definitely keep that in mind as I speak with other folks in the autism community. So
great.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Well, y'all take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.